All right, so we're going to chat about Luke 15, which is in most Bibles it says the parable, the parable of the prodigal son. But in mine it actually says the lost son. And what I'm going to start this off by is asking you guys a question I want you to think about while I'm talking. What does Abba think when he sees you? You guys can even like write that down on your phone. What does Abba think when he sees you? And it's been interesting even reading through John 14 because I realized how many different times it says verses like, I am the way to the Father, or no one comes to the Father except through me. And I mean, obviously, anytime you have a focus that you want to learn or teach about, you see it in everything. You know what I mean? So I started to think about how really Abba's house is the destination. And it even said in yesterday's reading plan, it said, in my house are many mansions. And that word is translated as places of abiding. And it literally means the places we meet with him. Because what house is a home without the children, or the family being together? So really, I want to call Luke 15 the parable of Abba's house, because the focus is really on the household. So I want to start off by saying, when you think of something as being lost, what do you generally think of as being lost? Like leading up to the prodigal son, you've got the parable of the lost sheep, you've got the parable of the lost coin, and then finally you've got the parable of the lost son, right? And so when we say the word lost, it has a connotation of it once belonged to me. Because if it didn't belong to me, then it is not mine to lose, right? And I think it's a really important distinction to kind of set the stage with this, because in the Christian vernacular, it's really popular to say things like, oh, that person's lost, as in they don't know the Lord, right? Oh, we say, oh, that's just a lost person. Well, the problem with that is that lost things actually belong to someone. If it's lost, it has an owner, right? And so when we think about the lost son, you have to think about the lost son in the context of he has somebody who has ownership over him. So this really shifted my thinking when I started to think about this, because I think before I would have thought like, oh, that person's not saved. And so like they're in darkness and they're not in the kingdom and we're in the kingdom. And so there's almost kind of this like, I don't know what you want to call it. Like, yeah, kind of a you against them thing, or like there's even can be sort of a pride or an arrogance thing about it, that like, oh, I chose the good part and like you did not. And so you're going to be cast into outer darkness and gnashing of teeth and weeping. But I, on the other hand, get to walk on streets of gold, right? But that's just not the case, because all of us are born of God. It said before he formed you, he knew you. So there was a time before here where we were with the Father, not lost, which is setting the stage for the prodigal son, because you've got a father with two sons in the house. That's the beginning of the story. And so even kind of think of yourself as before time, before he formed us, he knew us in that way. All right. Okay, so we're going to start in Luke 15, verse 11. Then he said, a certain man had two sons. Now we're going to get into a little bit of Greek tonight. I love Greek words because sometimes these aren't translated super well. And this word, I hope you brought something to write something, because I should have printed out notes for you guys. I didn't do that. I will do that next time. A certain man had two sons. That word son is the Greek word weos. It's really important because at the end of this story, I'm going to hammer that. So you have to remember that. Okay. A certain man had two weoses. Weos is the Greek for the fully mature son. A weos is a son who has authority and shared nature. So you think about like your son, you've got a 5-year-old. Well, they're not fully mature yet. They don't quite have same nature. They don't quite look like, the beard. We don't have the beard yet or anything. Then so a weos is you're looking at like a 20, 30-year-old that's more fully mature. Okay. They are mature enough to share authority or share the nature. So that's the kind of man that they're talking about. So this certain man had two sons that were fully mature and had his same nature. The younger one said to the father, "Father, give me the portion of goods that falls to me." So he divides to them his livelihood. Now, in Greek, that's translated as he gave them his life. He didn't just, we're not just talking about money. It literally says he gave them his life. So what's that a picture of? Yes, it's a picture of Jesus, but it's also you. You're his mirror image. All right. We were given his life. And so these two sons are going to become a picture of what people choose on the earth as sons and daughters of God. So he gave them his life. He gave inheritance to both the younger and the older. It wasn't just, I mean, I think a lot of times people think, we were talking about this the other day, that the inheritance is given only to it wasn't. It was given to both. So you've got the older son who remains working at the house, and then you've got the younger son that actually left and went to a different country, but also took part of the inheritance. So verse 13 says, not many days after, the younger son gathered everything together, journeyed to a far country, and wasted his possessions with prodigal living. And this one messed me up. Raise your hand. This is like a classroom. Raise your hand if you guys know. Do you guys know the word sozo? Yes. Okay. Sozo means saved, delivered, healed, set whole, completely right. Right? This word prodigal is actually a sozo. It's a negative. It is the negative of sozo. So it literally means unsavable. So the younger son went and wasted all of his possessions with unsavable behavior. Have you guys ever known in somebody with unsavable behavior? I mean, you look at them and you're like, man, their life is such a waste. I pick whatever it is, right? If it's a drug, if it's an alcohol thing, if it's 10 broken marriages, whatever, you can look at the life and you say, what a way. That's what we're talking about here. Like a unsavable mess. And this journey to a far country, most commentators would say that it's probably more, we're thinking Gentile territory, because he's going to start working with pigs. And in scripture, that's always this like parallel to the Gentiles or the unsaved people group when you got Israel over here being all holy. So when the younger son had spent all, there arose a severe famine in the land, and he began to be in want. That's translated as feel inferior. So after having this unsavable life, spending everything, I mean, you just think about what's important to the father. I don't think he's talking about money. I think he's talking about the nature and character of God. He's completely marred the image of where he came from at this point. And so he starts to just begin to suffer from comparison and inferiority complex, because he now feels inferior in comparison to everybody else around him. He's got nothing left. And anytime you try to find yourself providing for yourself, you know that you're touching this thing. And I want to make this huge point. He did everything wrong. There's not one thing that this guy did that was like, oh, well, that's possibly redeeming in that situation. No, like he did it all wrong. And that is so amazing, because I know the end of the story, but we're not there yet. This guy did everything wrong, including probably some homosexual behavior, because he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country. Joined himself is Greek for glued or cleaved together. He was literally looking for unity, like with a man. And desiring unity is not a bad thing. Everybody should desire unity. And marriage is a beautiful picture of unity. Obviously, like what my dad was talking about earlier tonight, you've got the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and he's in us and we're in him. That desire for unity is absolutely right and holy. But when you're displaced from Abba's house and you're out in the world and you have that desire for unity, you're going to pick whatever's in front of you and you're going to try to cleave yourself to it. And that's what he did. And when he did this with the pigs farmers in the pig farmer area. And it just, obviously, from the Gentile territory to the Jews, it's ritual impurity. It's a separation from God's commandment. It's basically a perfect picture of a profound fall from grace. Again, he's doing everything absolutely wrong. Okay, verse 16. And he would have gladly filled his stomach with the pods that the swine ate, but no one gave him anything. It's basically a lusting after, like wanting to desire to fill that craving. And we know that Jesus said, blessed are you hunger and thirst for righteousness. So the hungering isn't the problem. It's what we're filling our hunger with. It's the actual problem. Verse 17. Then he came to himself and said, "How many of my father's hired servants have bread enough to spare, and I perish with hunger?" So the phrase came to himself would just be what my dad was actually talking about earlier today, too, when he said he got the revelation that this is not a goal, that salvation is not a goal, but it actually already occurred. What he did when he came to himself is he returned to himself, or he actually remembered who he was from the beginning. That's what that phrase meant. He came to himself. He remembered who he was. He remembered that what he was doing and where he was actually wasn't indicative of the quality of the son that he had always been designed to be. But the culture around him became the culture he was accustomed to, right? If you're sitting out there in pig swine, you just get used to that, and that becomes something that's normal to you. And you start. We've talked about this so many times. You become what you behold. If you're looking at pig slop and you're in Gentile territory where they're doing everything unclean and unholy, you're going to reproduce that image in yourself, and you're gonna start to mimic the actions and the language and everything. So it's this fact that it says that he came to himself is a miracle. This is the miracle of being born again. He was born once, but he realizes, I'm going to go back to the place that I came from. In this situation, it's really interesting because it's like he didn't have the full awareness of what was going on, but he remembered part. And I think that's how most of us start our Christian journey. We have this awareness of like, oh, something needs to change. And then we move in the right direction, but we don't have like a fuller total understanding of it. And that's what he did. So the younger son identified himself as a slave, but said, okay, as a slave, I can go back to my father's house. But I know this happens 100% of the, well, not 100%. In many cases in Christianity, when somebody gets saved, then they're like, okay, well, I'll go work in God's house because now I'll just be a slave because that's all I really deserve is I'm just going to go and work really hard because he's so good and I've wasted my life really. And so now I'm going to try to earn it and make it up. And that's the mentality that you can kind of see in him is even though he had this moment of awareness of like, oh, wait, I was created for more than this. He still did not have the maturity to be able to say, wait a minute, I'm a son. He still identified himself as a slave. And I've talked to so many people over the years that say like, okay, well, now that I'm in the church and now that I'm saved, well, what's my spiritual gift so I can work? What's my gifting? So because I really want, I need to, am I a giver? Am I a servant over here? Am I a teacher? Like, it's so much focus on the doing part of it. And that's exactly what the younger son does here is he focuses on the doing part of it instead of the being part. He still wants to call himself in his being as a slave. But what's amazing is in the father's eyes, he never stopped being a son. And that's going to be the primary identifier in the rest of his life. So verse 18, he says, I will arise and go to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. And this is where we get the sinner's prayer from. That just started, what, in 1980, I think?
No, it was before that. It started with
Billy Graham. There we go. So a little bit further back. But here's where this whole mentality rests. I'm so sinful. I have such a sinful nature. I will never be worthy. I mean, I remember when we started the Light and Truth prayer calls, we had so many people that would start to pray from this place of I'm not worthy and oh, I'm just glad to be in the room. And what Lord, I need to serve you. And from the standpoint of just being a worthless worm and seeing God so holy and pure and having this disconnect between the two. And so this is what he's doing. This is what the younger son is doing. I'm just not worthy. I'm just so sinful. I'm so sorry. And that tape just plays over and over and over and over again. If you see yourself as unworthy, all you're going to try to do is serve God as a slave. That's all you can do. You'll cut yourself off as a son or a daughter, and then you try to work hard to earn his favor, to just benefit from his resources instead of enjoying the relationship that's available. Okay, verse 20. We have talked a lot about repentance too between, TNT and Light and Truth, and even in Aletheia, we've talked about repentance, and we've got a podcast coming out about it too. But repentance just means change the way you think. It does not have anything to do with saying I'm sorry. And so if we look at this story, what he does in verse 20 is actually the young son's repentance. It says, he arose and came to his father. His actions changed, which is proof that his mindset was beginning to shift into something else. It wasn't fully there yet, but he was starting to, and that is the proof of repentance. So he arose and came to his father, but when he was still a long way off, the father saw him and had compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said, Father, he rehearses the sinner's prayer again. I have sinned against heaven and in your sight, and I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. You know what's actually totally amazing about this? The father completely ignores him. He didn't say, "Oh, you're right. You're such a sinner and but you know what? It's okay and I guess I'll let you." He didn't do any of that. The father actually completely ignores the son's big whole forgiveness sinners prayer thing. Without responding to the son, he turns and looks at the servants and says, "Bring out the best robe and put it on him and put a ring on his hand." And he didn't demand an apology. I mean, can you sit there and just think about what this must have been like? You have a kid that has literally done the unsavable, everything totally, absolutely wrong. And here he was supposed to be the mature son of God, the fully mature weos that we talked about at the beginning, right? That's how he was identified at the beginning of the story, was the fully mature representative of the father, and he did it all wrong. All of it. And so just put yourself in the position of the father real quick. And you see this mess coming up the road. What's your first reaction? You put your hands on your look, you apologize because what you did was absolutely incorrect and you need to make sure and he like this is I was talking to Ramiro on Saturday morning about this. You know, when Judas is about to betray Jesus, he's like, Judas, whatever you do, go and do it quickly. He didn't out him in front of everybody else. He didn't be like, hey guys, I know what this guy here is up to. He's stealing from us. Can you just imagine the whole scene? Like if we would have known that Judas was going to betray us, what we would have done in that situation? I mean, I'm growing in the Lord. I'm not there yet. Not there yet, but I can see it. And so I said to Ramiro, I said, it's so beautiful the way that Jesus brought correction into Judas because all he did was say, hey, I'm worthy of worship. Because Judas was so upset because Mary had pulled all this. Oh, I could have been sold for and given money to the poor. Oh, no, you don't care about giving money to the poor. But Jesus, in the way that he corrected, all he did was he said, Judas, I'm worthy of worship. That was the correction. And in the same way, you see that same spirit with the Father. He completely ignores the apology. Again, I'm not there yet. I still want an apology. I'm working on it, but I can see his nature. And as I see his nature, I'm able to duplicate his nature because we become what we behold. I see him as in a mirror. And so as I see him being kind like this, I'm then able to receive the grace to then be kind in like manner because I know it's possible because he did it. So this is what the father does after the son comes. But the father said to the servants, bring out the best robe and put it on him and put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet. Okay, I'm going to pause right here and I am going to do this. I was debating about whether I should do this or not, but I am going to because you guys look like you want to be Greek experts tonight. So I did a pretty deep study on what the word put really means. And interestingly, it means, okay, so bring out the best robe and put it on him. That first put, we're going to talk about the first put first, okay? That put is the Greek word endu. And it literally means what is received becomes part of your character. It doesn't even really mean put. It's more like a putting on. In English, that's what we would say. Like there's scriptures that also say put on Christ or put on the armor of light. It's the same word, Greek word endu. And it literally means that once it's put on, you're transformed into that character or that nature. It's more than just putting on a robe. It literally means you're now empowered with new identity. And what I love about the way that the father said it to the servants is he said, endu the robe. Or receive this robe that then transforms your entire nature and character. That was the first thing he did, was this robe, okay? Then the second put is a different Greek word. That's the Greek word didomai. and it means a divine source of a generous act. Now, here is the super interesting thing. You cannot undo anything unless you first do, and unless you first receive it, which is another Greek word. I know I'm getting into the thick of things, but trust me, this makes a huge difference. So this other Greek word to receive is lambano. Okay. You cannot undo something before you lambano something. So in other words, I can't put on a robe that I receive unless I receive it first. The receiving must happen first. The endo doesn't just automatically happen. First, it must be received by the giver. In other words, grace is available to everybody, but not everybody's wearing it. Why? Because you have not lambanoed it. You have to receive it to endo it. And that's the really interesting part is God never put in the scriptures, it never says that they lambandoed the robe. It just says that they endued it on him, which tells me that the robe of righteousness is just something that God just comes and goes, "Poof." and but we have a choice of whether we're going to appropriate that action or not. I know so many people that, oh, no, 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 no. I'm not righteous. No, 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 no. No, no, there's no worthiness here. I absolutely couldn't put it on. Well, that's just ridiculous because it's for you. It was literally tailor made for you. And if you don't put it on, you will be the unsavable person. Literally, that's why Jesus is the way back to the Father, because his robe of righteousness becomes our robe of righteousness. And the Father doesn't see us for us, it sees us just as he sees Jesus, which is why there's so much automatic communion and co-union. And so bring out the best robe and endo it, and then give the divine source of the generous act of God is then the ring and the sandals. And it's got to be the robe first. Because if you do not identify yourself with Jesus' righteousness, you can never have his authority and you will never walk in his peace. Ever. He doesn't give the ring and the shoes first. You can't walk in authority outside of righteousness. It does not work that way. So first, the robe. And this, when I started to talk to the Lord about the prodigal son and walk through this, and I began to see his heart about this. I had one morning where I run a lot and I was out running and I stopped and I kind of started slowing down. I just started praying in the spirit. And I'm not kidding you. I literally felt the robe around me. I could feel the robe around me. And I'm walking and I feel my hand come up and I'm like, oh my gosh, that ring's heavy. And I'm walking and I'm thinking about the sandals. They're sandals of peace. Peace means to be dovetailed together. It's a picture of total divine unity. And I spent the next 20 minutes on the rest of my run, well, it became a walk, praying in the spirit and enjoying. I mean, this was so other than. And so I really want to invite you guys. I want you to take a second and I want you to see yourself as the unsavable son coming back and saying to the Lord, you know, I'm such a sinner, and then I want you to see the servants bring out the robe. And I want you to see what it looks like. I just close your eyes for a second. Just close your eyes. And I want you guys to see the servants bring out the robe. And we know that Jesus's robe flashed like lightning. We know that Joseph's robe was a robe of many colors. I mean, this is not thrift store righteousness. This is the creme de la creme of robes. And I want you to think about those servants picking up the robe and bringing it over to you. And I want you to see you just slide your hand into the left arm. And as you slide it in, all of the pig dirt and all of the scum starts to just slide off of you completely. And you look down and you're totally clean. You just let the robe keep coming on to the other side and put your right hand in. Just see all the filth completely gone. And all of a sudden you're standing there and the Father looks at you and says, this is not to cover the dirt. This is to highlight your sonship. Because that's what the robe of righteousness does. It highlights your position. And I want you to kick off your shoes. And I want you to see the sandals. and put them on and take a look at the ring, because the ring that they're putting on your hand, that ring gives you authority to make business transactions in the kingdom, just as the Father. It's a signet ring. And I want you to experience the feeling that you did absolutely nothing to deserve it. In fact, you did everything wrong. And then I want you seeing yourself walking back to the house with the Father and seeing the servants call for the fatted calf and watching them bring it in. And you, the one that did everything wrong, did the one thing right. You ran into acceptance. This is what grace is. Romans 5:17 says, "For by one man's offense death reigned. But much more, those who receive abundance of grace and the gift of righteousness will reign in life through the one Jesus Christ." You guys can open your eyes. I want you to think about the fact that this is something that you have to receive. This gift of righteousness is available to everyone, but most people don't actually appropriate the gift and then walk like they own it. So that's one lost son. Now we're going to talk about the other lost son, because there's still another son. So the older son is in the field. What's he doing in the field? As a slave. So we got another mentality problem wrong. And what's really interesting is that both of these guys really thought of themselves as slave, whatever side of the coin that they're on. And even if you do ever a study into Song of Solomon, it's really interesting because the Shulamite saw herself as a slave many times throughout the story too. And so we have to understand that that is a type and shadow of this whole Egypt thing, where you're just working for Pharaoh and you're working and you're working and you're building another person's kingdom. That's all that slavery stuff is. And so the minute that you notice that you're partnering with the work harder mentality, you know you're slipping into either the older son or the younger son, because they're both slaves, just working for different kingdoms. So the older son is in the field, and he came and drew near to the house, and he heard music and dancing. And so he called to one of the servants and asked what these things meant. Now, why in the world would he call a servant? So he's hanging out with, and obviously he didn't have a relationship with his dad. I mean, if I had a question about what's going on with my brother, I'm not going to go ask anybody but my Abba. So absolutely. Yes. So he said to him, "Your brother came, and because he has received him safe and sound, your father has killed the fatted calf." So what I love about this is the father wasn't just after the younger lost son, he was also after the older lost son. And they were no less lost. I don't care if you're 10 feet outside the house or if you're 200 miles outside the house. The point is you're still outside the house. And remember, the destination is Abba's house. Jesus is the way back to the Father. People with a religious spirit will often work their butts off in working for God, but they never actually enjoy the provision of his house. And I did this for years. I'm exhibit A here. And that's the reason why I can talk about it. But Abba always wanted relationship over the work. And what's really interesting is that, neither of the, we were talking about, we were talking about angels the other day and how they're the ministering servants. I mean, there are ministering servants that are there to do the work of the kingdom that needs to be done. We get to enjoy the inheritance and belonging. But a lot of times we think that we have to go and labor because it's productive or it's doing something. But I really feel like our part is just to really enjoy him, to enjoy his provision, to be at the table. What's some other ways that we might work for God? Anybody have any ideas?
Oh, ministry.
Yeah, ministry is a big one. Yes.
Prayer.
Prayer, fasting, tithing, checking off the Bible plan, worshiping to get the breakthrough. I mean, these are some really weird things. If we just do this long enough, if we add our effort long enough, surely the breakthrough will come. And I just don't think that I did that. I did it for a long time and I tried the hardest. And you know what? It always brought me into a state of futility. And if there was an answer to prayer, guess who got the credit? Me, because I fasted, because I prayed, because I worshiped long enough. And it's so subtle, but it's so ugly. And once you really understand what Abba's like, you start to understand, oh, he's actually not like that at all. I don't have to work for these things. I do get to fellowship with him and talk, like you guys brought up so well tonight. Just ask him about all the little things. Umberto, I loved how you said, like, look, and here it was. And it's not like you tried super hard when you got married to fulfill this promise. And then you look back 34 years and look, oh, look, we did it. No, it's like you pick it up and you're like, oh my gosh, Lord, you're so faithful. And I guess the point is at the end of a trial, if I'm not looking back and being like, oh my gosh, God, you're so amazing. How your power is unbelievable. If I'm not doing that, but I'm saying, oh, look at my mighty right hand that won me the victory. That's wrong. I never win me the victory. It's always him. So this is how it just gets super tricky with the oldest son. And really the older son is a picture of Israel and the younger son's a picture of the Gentiles. But you see how Israel's still working? They're still working. They still don't see the robe of righteousness. They can't. You can do the right thing for the wrong reason and it be wrong. And you can never earn God's love or his favor for just being obedient and working hard for him. I have this was like the best example ever for me. This just happened. I had a friend who really, really, really wanted this car. Like was obsessing about this car. And she was complaining about it. Like complaining about her old car. This isn't what I wanted. It's breaking down all the time. This is a horrible car. I just want this car and being snobby about it kind of, you know? And then I had another friend that was like, "Oh, I'm driving this little car, but it's working for me, and I'm just not going to complain, and it'll all work out, okay." Now, in our mindset, who do we think deserves to get the nice car? The humble one who's not complaining, who's just, I'll just keep working hard. And guess who got the car? The complainer. And I was literally baffled one morning in prayer. And I was like, Lord, I don't understand. And he said, if you're the older son and you're just working and putting your head down and not complaining, that's just as bad. Because you're not accessing the resources. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? It's not like God's like, oh, well, you had the right attitude, so I'm going to give this to you. I don't think he's like that. I think what he's after is our hearts and doing it with him. I mean, sometimes people's maturity level is just that. I'm just going to complain. Well, that's just where I am because I'm not mature yet, you know? But what I love is that the Lord sees our heart. And I'm not saying it's okay to complain. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it blows up our religious paradigms of what we think people deserve, because the guy that did everything wrong is the one that wound up with the robe and the ring and the sandals. And the guy that did everything right is the one who ended up in the field with nothing. You see what I'm saying? And this should confound you to a place where this religious wall system in you starts to break down and say, okay, Lord, it really is just grace. It is not because I earn it by my good behavior. It really is just because you're that stinking good. Okay, so back to verse 28. Back to older son. He was angry and he would not go in the house. Therefore, the father came out. Look at the father running both. He sees the younger son and runs. He sees the older son and runs. You see that his nature didn't change with either one of the sons? And so he's pleading with him. And he says to his father, lo, these many years I've served you. I've never transgressed your commandment at any time. This is the old car person who never complained, right? Never you gave me a goat. You never gave me a new car that I might go have fun with my friends. But as soon as this other son comes who's complaining, or didn't do anything right. You kill the fatted calf for him. Right? So we have slave language in the older son's mouth. I'm serving you. I've obeyed your commandments. There's no intimacy there at all. The Pharisee heart can never celebrate another person's promotion or favor. The Pharisee heart will complain and will compare. The Pharisee does not enjoy Abba's provision, but wants to try to add their own works to it. The Pharisee always feels like they're earning God's favor by doing things for him. The Pharisee obeys without intimacy, expecting to receive some kind of reward. But more than Abba ever wanted sacrifice, he just wanted their hearts. What's crazy is that acceptance was always available to the older son, but he never received it. Acceptance was available to both sons, but the younger one is the one who actually received it and then got to walk in the blessing and the favor and everything from it. So now, do you remember at the beginning we talked about the weos, the fully mature son? And I'm going to teach you another Greek word, the teknon. The teknon is the young child that's incredibly immature. When Abba talks to the son in the field, he calls him a teknon. He went from a fully mature son to the most immature, unable to carry out any of his father's authority. That's astounding to me. Not only could he not receive the robe and the ring and the shoes, but he actually immatured through the trial, which I had never understood before, that this was possible. And it shows me that the Lord, in his benevolence and his graciousness, he never stops offering acceptance, but he does say, you actually do, because I have been so gracious, I have offered you so much and you have refused, your immaturity level has gone to an extreme. You used to be a fully mature son. Now you're not able to handle anything in my kingdom. So he says, son, you're always with me. All that I have is yours. It was right that we should make merry and be glad, for your brother was dead and alive and was lost and was found. And that's just amazing to me. You can pretend to be a son but function as a slave. And when you do that, your spiritual maturity goes down to back to like being a baby. That's what it causes you to do. So which of the two brothers ended up enjoying the father's provision? The younger one. And now I'm going to go back to the question that we started with. What does Abba think when he sees you?
He's looking for sonship or daughtership. He's looking for sons and daughters.
Does he see you as the one that messed up? Does he see you as the one that didn't pray enough? Does he see you as the one that didn't work hard enough for him? Or that got in trouble for not giving money? Or that didn't worship long enough for the breakthrough? Or didn't fast enough so that somebody could be healed? He doesn't see that. There's a verse in John 8 that has been wrecking me. And I've been praying it every morning, and it's doing something so deep in my heart. Jesus said this. He said, he's talking about Abba, his Abba, and he said, he who sent me is with me. The Father has not left me alone because I always do the things that please him. So, I don't remember. It's in my notes. I always do the things that please him. I want you guys to take that phrase and start praying it in the morning. Just in agreement. Because I'm in him and he's in me, right? So therefore, I always do the things that please him. I'm like crying in the morning praying this verse. How could you be so good? That you would make me able to always do the things that please you. But this is true. If it's not too good to be true, it's not the gospel. If I can do it, it's not the gospel. That's not good news. It's really good news when I find that he really is all.